everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. Welcome to episode 288. How do you start when you sit down to write? This is something that a lot of us might not think about, but once we're caught in the moment, we start a writing session and we don't actually start, we just sit there, or we wonder what we're supposed to be doing. Some of us rehash old territory. So, for example, many of us will start with rereading a manuscript, and that's fine. Like sometimes that's the move we need to make to refresh our memory. But one of the things that might not be helpful is if you're writing frequently. So, for example, some of our dissertation writers this summer and some of our faculty members that have time to write a little bit more regularly, one of the things you might realize is that you don't necessarily need to read a full manuscript every day to know what you're doing, because sometimes that doesn't necessarily help you. And in a past episode, one of the things I mentioned was I'm a big fan of writing a closing note. So if you're watching this on YouTube, what you're looking at is a closing note I made to myself at the end of a writing session where I just reminded myself, what are some things I still need to do? I was completing a book on sabbaticals. And at this stage, I was pretty close to finishing the book. So I pretty much wrote myself notes and they were all over the place. They were things like, find the correct figure files and add something about these little call out boxes and update references in a couple of places and things like that. So many of us do have a running list of tasks that we need to do. And of course, that can be a spot for an entry point. But what's more interesting to me about this is that if we're really getting in the habit of writing, the way that it plays out for most of us during the academic year with heavy teaching schedules, very fragmented time, due to a lot more administrative work. Some of us have childcare, elder care responsibilities, and just it's very rare that many of us will have a whole day to just work on writing. It's just not a thing for most of us, just the way that academic life is right now. And so what we have to do is get really used to clicking in and clicking out of writing. So just like we jump in and out of email, or just like we go to class and we go and teach a class and come back, or go to a meeting, writing is one of those things that it does require a heavy mental load to know what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And once we sit down, the other thing is many of us have probably sat down for a writing session and maybe we got a few things done, but it was really unsatisfying because that's not the way that we wanted it to go. So I want to put out a couple things that might be helpful at this point. One of the great things about summer for most of us, and I realize this is for us in the northern hemisphere, but if we have the time to spend some time on writing, I like a good self-study in the summer to just pay attention. So, for example, if you're going to write, say, 5 hours during the week, and maybe you want to do like 30 minutes of writing, a couple of mornings a week or an hour here or there, whatever it is that you're doing, I really encourage you to stick an empty post-it. So I'm holding one up as a visual aid. Stick an empty post-it in your laptop and just with a quick note about how did I start? Take a couple quick notes because what I would have you look at would be how long does it take you to get going? Could you open up your laptop, open up your manuscript, and then get to work within 10 minutes because you kind of know what you want to work on? Maybe you left yourself some really good closing notes from the last time and you're able to keep going. Or did you kind of flounder around and wonder, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Or you find yourself like kind of what I call doing circular writing, where you just keep working on the same thing over and over and you feel like you're not getting anywhere. This happens a lot with revisions or if you've been burned in any way. So, for example, with a revise and resubmit, maybe that didn't work out so well for you and you're kind of cautious now, so you keep rewriting the same sections. You're not really working towards movement and completion, which are two of our main principles with all the work we do at Defend and Publish. So movement, as a quick reminder, is just that you're making some kind of progress on your writing, and completion is the goal that guides the choices. So when you're working on your writing, ask yourself, does this move this manuscript closer to completion? And sometimes this is a bit of a judgment call, but it does mean at some point you have to accept that in certain places writing is good enough. It is good enough where it needs to be. So all of that is to say that once we go to our regular writing session, sometimes just sitting down there is not enough. So a lot of times we'll see sort of like the punishment mentality where, you should have work, 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week, and you should just sit in the chair and you're just going to have to make yourself sit there. And we know for some people, if you truly hate writing, you just hate doing it. You find it boring. It's antisocial. You wish you were doing something else. You're going to immediately go check email because you hate it so much. Sitting there more is not going to help you. What is going to help you is having a clear framework for, I have to do this. I don't necessarily love it, but I need to have a way to just engage and get it completed. So, for example, I know I was talking with somebody about like flossing. A lot of us, don't necessarily like to floss, and how a lot of people have to kind of force themselves to do it, and all the little things that they tie to it, like the habit trains that they might do. And this is somewhat the same thing. So one of the things with flossing, though, is we know what to do. You pick up the box of floss, you tear off a piece, and then you do it. With writing, it's so much more complex because for at any given point, there's hundreds of decisions you could make about what to do next. But also, it's hard to put those in a hierarchical sort of view, like which things are going to be the best choices in this particular writing session. So that's the part that I think a little self-study can be really helpful to just figure out how long does it take you to get going? Did you feel satisfied once you completed it? So here would be a good example. Yesterday I wrote for 45 minutes. It took me about 8 minutes because I did pay attention last time to get started. And I felt like it went okay. It was not great, but it went okay. And one of the things that I did during my little self-study was to figure out what is it that I was really unsatisfied. And what I realized is that I figured out I was spending way too much time on kind of studying some sources and working on a literature review paragraph, where many times literature review paragraphs are not going to be the thing that moves the needle. They're not going to be the thing that gets you the acceptance for a journal. It's going to be much more about significance and results and discussion and connection to the literature, not necessarily who else you're citing. So I made a couple of notes about I needed to do that next time, and that was a good way to do it. So self-study is definitely one way that you can figure out how to start, even if you don't necessarily know. Of course, we can always go with the tried and true. We can always, review, read a manuscript, figure out what we did last time. But that shouldn't be always our go-to move. But it is an option because sometimes it's necessary, especially if you've had a couple days off of writing. You can also do a closing note. So at the end of writing sessions, I do try to write pretty detailed closing notes. So at least I have something to go on. So in 24 hours or 48 hours or 1 week later, I want to have a list somewhere of what I need to work on. So all of us are probably doing that. Another thing, though, that you could do that could be really helpful with figuring out what to do in a writing session is to compartmentalize a little bit and kind of say, like, okay, this is the day I'm going to work on revision tasks, or this is the day that I'm going to work on all that documentation stuff, or today is the day that I'm really going to focus on my methodology. And sometimes if you have a bigger goal for the writing session itself, it can be a thing where you ask yourself, is this part of the methodology I'm supposed to be working on? Yes or no? If it's no, it's waiting till another day. So there's a lot of decision making in there. However, one of the great things that we do in July is we almost always run a free webinar on writing in some way. And so we are running our free webinar. It's actually this upcoming Monday, July 13th, called 5 Entry Points to Writing. And the nice thing about these entry points is that the 5 of them are ones that you can use pretty much with any writing project at any stage. And they basically give you 5 choices of where to start every time. So if you want to join us for that, it's totally free. Just click the link in the show notes, and you can also get the recording if you can't make that time. But we hope you're able to join us for that. And happy writing this week.